Welcome to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Discover the personal drive, professional journeys, and business strategies that have made a real impact. It's success from the inside out.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we're chatting with Andre Arrata. Andre is a seasoned leader with over 25 years of experience in driving business development, operational excellence, client success, and commercial growth. Currently, he serves as the VP Client Success at Ventrek, where he focuses on building organizational depth and implementing proven entrepreneurial strategies. With experience working in Canada and the Middle East, Andre has gained immense leadership and growth lessons. He's passionate about delivering client-centered solutions and sharing his learnings with other entrepreneurs. So welcome to the show, Andre. And do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on?
Well, sure. Well, thanks for having me on, Matt. I appreciate it. And as I was saying, I think when anyone has the ability to help promote the Alberta spirit, that entrepreneurial spirit, hats off to you, and thanks for doing the work that you're doing. From my side, from Ventrek side, it's really how you introduced us. We are looking to help entrepreneurs and small businesses get to that next level of growth. And we come at it from the perspective of trying to use the Jim Collins words of taking a company from good and trying to help them become great.
Yeah.
So, the two of us right now, there's two of us in the company. There's two others looking to come in, but our focus has been entrepreneurial, right? We're both entrepreneurs, and I think we've got enough scars on our backs that we felt we could, one, do what we love, which is to be entrepreneurs, and then two, the second part of what we love was to help companies grow. I've always been growth focused in the roles that I've had, and I always had a rule of thumb that if I didn't love the product, if I didn't love the people I'm working with, if we weren't having fun, right, I shouldn't be doing it. And growth was always a big part of that fun, enjoying the growth and enjoying the team.
So you're talking about scaling businesses and helping them focus on that growth. What type of exercises or processes are you doing with these organizations?
Well, we do have a little bit of an organized client journey. And in the first part of what we've trying to bring in with the company, whether they're existing and potentially a 15, 20-year company or a company that's been around 5 years, is just to help them get really clear on the roles and the responsibilities within their company. So trying up front to gain clarity. And with clarity, I might call that a bit of structure and clear swim lanes. So it's I'm a believer in people, but I'm also a believer that people need to have a little bit of the boundaries in order to help each other and be successful.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what is that journey? Like, if you're coming in and we're having that discussion, what areas of the business are we really going to focus on to try to drive that growth?
Well, that goes back to your first question. Hey? So we really do start with what we would term a foundation building day, which is literally looking at the structure of the company. And we would term that going into an R&R chart. So we bring the leadership team together. It could be anywhere from 3 people up to 15. It's the largest group that I have right now, and trying to lay out for the group, what are the roles in the company, not the titles. I think titles is something people get wrapped up in, and that's really for the external world. We're trying to look at the roles, and we simplify it from the perspective of typically sales and marketing is a role, and that can be broken up. Operations, which operations can also have a number of components to it, and finance, accounting, administration. So those to us are the kind of the 3 major or critical functions, roles within a company.
Like kind of like the buckets
big buckets
that company has, and then within each one of those buckets, say on the finance and admin, you might have 2 people, 10 people, 100 people within those doing those different roles as well.
You're right. It's exactly depending on the company itself and what their specific their product and their service is. That's when you can get into the details. Right. But from our perspective, is every company needs to bring in clients, right? We need to be bringing in revenue, which comes from sales and marketing.
Right.
Operations takes care of the quality, delivery of the product. And finance and let's call it accounting, it could be also admin, takes care of how are we doing financially. And we need all three of those major buckets or major functions kind of firing, aligned, and working together.
Right. You said you kind of had a wide range of different size organizations, but what is that kind of the typical clientele that you'd be working with?
Well, typical for us would be companies that kind of have had that 5 years of experience, like they've been around for 5 years. Usually they have anywhere from 10, plus, but upwards of about 250 people. So I think the ideal client range for us is in that 10 to probably 50 million range. And then I think from that perspective, we can help them see some pretty dramatic growth. We do have clients that are obviously much larger than that, but that's more the exception than the rule. Right?
Yeah. And as you're looking at those roles and responsibilities, are you doing any type of like strat plan sessions with the groups as well?
So, we'll go through a foundation building day, which is what I discussed. Then we'll do a core building day. And the core building day for us is we focus on 8 core elements of vision, which, whether it's a company or individual, it's who are you deep down, and who then are you serving from your ideal client perspective. From there, if a client requires it, we might do some leader building days, one session, let's call it on leader building, and then we would move into strategy. Our belief realistically is you need to understand your core values and core purpose before you can really get deep into strategy. You need to know what you're about, who your clients are, what are differentiators before you can really get into that, what I would call either the, growth canvas exercises and or annual, planning exercises.
Yeah. Okay. What are some of the skills that you have that really help support you in this type of role and being able to do this work with other companies?
Well, I'd like to think I have some pretty good experience. I had a lot of great mentoring, but I think if I was going to pull out, let's say, one skill set, I think it would have to be listening. A lot of what we're trying to do within our sessions, it really isn't as much as I like to talk. It's really not about me. It really is about what the team is requiring and trying to get, the best knowledge and information out from the team. And when you're listening quiet and asking probing questions, you then also start to understand, what are the elephants in the room that might be there? And now how do we create this honest, open, vulnerable type of environment where we're really solving the tough problems? That becomes, I think, the trust building upfront is those listening skills that come in.
Yeah. And what is your background? Like, how did you get into this line of work? What got you into this organization?
Well, I'll have to take you back about 1,000 years. So I actually was working for a family-run business, which was my father's company, my dad's company, and it wasn't in the plans at all, but it just fate conspired to get us together. Within that role, I started to actively take on the strategic planning of the company. So at that time, it was vision. Our 5-year was Vision 2000, and so we took along that, built it out, built our 5-year vision. Oddly enough, in those days, strategy was almost one of these things that you do the work and then you put it on the bookshelf, and you might dust it off. But if you look down the road 5 years, the company actually achieved 90% of the targets, the objectives, the major pillars that we had set out. And that kind of got me in the direction of strategy planning, which also goes, in my mind, hand in hand with business development. So a lot of my focus in my career was in business development and operations. And when you're doing business development, there has to be some strategic focus behind where you're going, what you're doing, why you're offering it. So that, if I try to condense it into a nutshell, that's the big part of it is the business development and strategy work. And I'll be honest, I had and I still do have a pretty amazing dad where he was always focused and always pushing to start to ask the questions of, okay, what are we not doing?
Yeah.
What's next? What does our client really need that we're not offering them? How could we improve our services? And maybe that all of those aren't exactly strategy, but it certainly does allow you to pick and choose areas that you want to look at that help to drive strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'd mentioned just in the opener that you had connections with the Middle East as well.
Yeah.
Do you work over with any companies in the Middle East, or where's that background from?
Well, so the background is my mom and dad are both from Egypt, right? They
Okay.
came
Yeah.
they came from Egypt. I was born and raised in Calgary, but they were both from Egypt.
Mhm.
And more and a lot of my career actually was internationally focused. So with my dad's company, with another public entity called Centurion, we were international.
Mhm.
Um, my last, let's call it 8 to 10 years before coming back to Canada, I was in Dubai, so working in the Gulf region and Middle
Okay.
Eastern region. So that's where that kind of background comes from. Is just the work I was doing.
Yeah.
The majority of it was international work.
Yeah. Okay. So you're working with international organizations that have the operations kind of throughout the world, and a lot of it over in that area.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 Well, how has that experience kind of shaped what you're doing on the strat side? Because I mean, strategy is relatively universal, but there are certainly differences geographically.
It's a great question because there actually it does bring in a number of differences. I mean, one, I think there's always a cultural aspect of
Mhm.
what we're doing. Specifically, if we're a Western company and we're looking to offer services or products into a different region,
Right.
there's always cultural aspects which come into strategy. How people, one, communicate, how they view long-term versus short-term, and how they actually view value.
Yeah.
One of the examples, maybe a bad example, but the opportunity was working in Iraq. And the mindset that came from Iraq is these resources in the ground are the resources of our kids and future generations, right? So
Yeah.
we don't need to necessarily be in a rush to do things. We want to do them with our kids and our kids, grandkids in mind. The other is actually borders. You always have to be understanding face to face versus in this world, virtual. How are we actually going to meet with people? How are we actually going to get them comfortable with us? It starts at that early end of the business development cycle, but then it leads through to operations, and it also leads through into the processes and systems that we'll be using, right?
Yeah.
We always go through in our current sessions, our annual crafting sessions, this whole consideration of a growth canvas, right, which looks at which areas of the world, geographic regions,
Mhm.
right, would be better suited for our products, and how do we prioritize what we're going to be doing in those areas, right? So I think the international one teaches you a few things. You've got to be patient. You have to be patient. Nothing happens quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Two is you have to be respectful of other people and cultures. So it forces you to understand, or at least make an effort to start to understand, like, what's important for you, as Matt, what's important for
Mhm.
Matt here? And how do I start to understand if I can actually bring that value to what you're doing?
Yeah.
And then the other, quite literally, is every culture has a different way of interacting and a different value system. So that all comes from what we're doing now, right? The foundation, the core, and ultimately that leading to strategy.
Okay. Yeah. Very interesting. Is there, I mean, obviously without saying names here, if you don't want to, but is there an example of a success story that you've had with a company and help them be able to go and scale up on that growth side?
Oh, probably a few. Maybe the most recent was actually working in Dubai.
Okay.
It wasn't my company, but I joined a group. We were, I was the number two of two at that time, and we had zero revenue. Um, the focus of the operations was actually in Iraq, in Kurdistan and Baghdad, Rumaila area, and we were competing against the big companies, the Schlumbergers, the Halliburtons, the Expros, and also dealing with some of the larger IOCs in the world, like the Chevrons, Exxon, ADCO, ADNOC, the government companies. And we were a 3 person group. And the point is, what do you have to offer me? Right. So we had to be very clear. We had to get really clear on what our value proposition was.
Yeah.
And for us, we termed it the Alberta Advantage, where we could take a bunch of technology that exists in the market, a bunch of get it done attitude, and we could deliver projects in roughly 3 to 6 months or up to 9 months, depending on the specifics of the project.
Mm-hmm.
So we were delivering upwards of 50,000 barrels a day, right? And we did that within a 12-month project cycle, which is pretty unheard of in those parts of the world. But realistically, that was one where we grew from zero revenue, blank piece of paper, to about 140 million within a 5-year period. And we were able to sustain in the downturn of the oil prices and during COVID, right? Which was, I think, speaking to, I wish it was me, but it was really the strength of the team, right? The strength of the team that we had built. So we ended up with operations in about 4 countries, operating in about 6 countries. And we had an incredible team, amazing people. And so that was, I was really one of the top 3 within our specific group, that we were interchangeable for each other. But I think we drove the vision, we drove the day-to-day work, and we drove the strategy. How do we become noticeable in this market where we're a pea and there's all these big elephants.
Yeah. Some of those other companies that you listed, they're fairly large in size.
and honestly, I mean, when you look at what we were able to achieve in one of the most competitive industries in the world, and the true question always was like, oh, why would we deal with you? Who are you guys? We don't even know you. And I think that again comes back to that entrepreneurial spirit of, we've got so much to offer, just give us this chance. We got so much to offer to you. And we were lucky enough to get some breaks, which you always need in business. You need some luck.
Of course, yeah.
And I think more importantly for me, we had just amazing people on the team.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Very, very cool success story. And so is that still ongoing? Was that just kind of the one project based? What are you looking at with that?
Well, the company itself is still ongoing. So when COVID happened, maybe a bit too personal, but I ended up feeling like I got stuck in Dubai. The airports had shut down and my family was still in Calgary. So I had a long stretch of time where I didn't have the chance to get back to Calgary.
Wow.
In addition, there were like pretty strong, they took COVID seriously, and there were some pretty strong lockdowns that happened there, where you'd have to, go to a government portal in order to get, a piece of paper that would allow you to go out and do 3 hours a week of whatever you needed to do from life. And that the fact of the matter is that got to me. And the first trip out of Dubai that I could get on, I came back to Calgary and spent time with my family, and we had a long talk over about 6 months, and I just didn't feel like it was right for me to go back. So that's where I got into talking with a friend, and he introduced me to Peter Zyla, who's the founder of Ventrek.
Okay.
And Pete and I had a few discussions and realized that we grew up in the same neighborhood, same neck of the woods in Calgary, and knew a lot of the same people, and that it would be a good opportunity for me to help build what Ventrek is doing.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
I'm just going to shift to the investment side a little bit, and because you have some of the more global experience, what are you seeing right now with organizations and investment into different countries? And I'll preface it by saying that I don't think that there's a lot of people that are going to argue against the fact that the Canadian economy is in a lot of trouble right now. We're as a nation, we're prosperous, but our growth is stagnant. We're falling way behind on all the other leading countries in the world, and I don't think there's really a way out of that. So I think we're seeing a lot of investment dry up at this point here. What's happening at a global scale with investment dollars?
Well, you know what? I honestly don't believe I'm qualified to answer that. I can give it a shot, but
Yeah.
this is, just one person's opinion. If you look at the energy sector, clearly there is a drive for technology. There's a drive for looking at renewables as a framework of energy. I, come from an oil and gas energy background, and my belief is absolutely we'd be crazy to say that we don't want a greener planet and we don't want to be careful with how we're emitting and spending our resources. And at the same time, we have to look at our consumption habits. How do we consume energy and realize that this need is not going to go away. It only continues to grow. So specifically towards oil and gas, I think we've really done ourselves a disservice in not looking at how do we take the resources that we have, which is very clean energy compared to a number of large jurisdictions in the world, and how do we work with other jurisdictions to provide them with cleaner energy, right? The fact that it's oil and gas or hydrocarbon based, if you like, is beside the point. Is working in the Middle East, specifically, working in some of the areas that I worked in, you see black plumes of smoke coming from flares.
Yeah.
And you would be able to take this expertise that we have in Canada and export that. And there is substantial investment that's happening in other jurisdictions, which doesn't necessarily bring money immediately back to Canada. But when we start to export our technology and our export expertise, that money does flow back in the framework, obviously, of revenue, of profits. And you would also hope reinvestment in R&D, technology, training, right? So we can continue to grow in other sectors of the world. I mean, realistically as well, I look at how we treat our natural resources, and without trying to be offensive, but it is my belief, we're a third world country from that perspective, where we export to other countries. They do let's call it upgrading of the resource, and we buy it back at a more expensive price. I'm not certain why we don't have the mentality in this country that we could be doing, that same service as well as anyone else in the world. Maybe not as cheap, granted, but I think the whole notion of being cheap in today's world is starting to have less importance.
Yeah.
And then the quality, right? The understanding of one technology, but also the quality and care that we put into things, right? And how we're looking at a project cycle as opposed to just this one thing, this one mouse. We need to start looking at cycles of time and cycles of energy and cycles of spending. Right. And I do believe the world is starting is waking up, is waking up to that knowledge.
Yeah. Okay. No, that was a great answer. So I think you were perfectly qualified.
Well, thanks. Thank you.
What advice would you give to, say, entrepreneurs that are just starting out in their business and they're looking to scale, or they're looking to have the foundation so that they can scale?
Oh, another great question. The foundation comes in the product or service, pardon me. It doesn't have to be just a product, but the foundation has to come from being able to understand what your value proposition is, or if you want to say it differently, what's my promise? What's my brand promise? And I think having the ability to understand that brand promise or the value as a differentiator and how it specifically adds value to your customers or your clients, right? That's super critical, really critical. Next, or maybe even first for me, actually, you got to have really good people along for the ride with you.
Yeah.
We do, a lot of our business comes from entrepreneurs, almost solopreneurs now, who have been doing it themselves for 5, 7, 10 years. And it's either grown really out of control, so they need a bit of a system, or they're at the point of saying, you know what, my family is taking such a back seat that I don't want to have that as my legacy.
Yeah.
Right. So it is an aspect that I think making sure you have really good people that you can trust right? Trust is really important at that early stage because you can't do it all. It's almost impossible in today's world.
Yeah.
But if you've got some team members who give you energy, who you can trust, and you can really just, create that synergy together, that's critical, I think, for new entrepreneurs in today's world.
Yeah.
I
Great.
think any world, right? Never mind just today.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
If somebody wanted to find out more about you or connect with you, where would they go for that?
Well, the easiest is probably our website, which is Ventrek, Ventrek.com. So Ventrek.com. I'm on LinkedIn under my name, which is Andre Arrata, and we're always happy, to connect with direct messaging. People can reach me. My phone should be on the Ventrek system, but emails as well. So that's probably the easiest way to do it, is either LinkedIn or the website.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you for
Well,
that.
certainly appreciate having you on the show today, and look forward to hearing more about what you guys are doing, and maybe see some more upcoming projects here.
Well, and again, as I said to you when we first started, I really love what you're doing in terms of promoting the entrepreneurs of Alberta and creating a community around that. So thanks for doing that. It's important.
Yeah. I think we have a great province, and I think
Yeah.
we have the best province certainly from a business perspective.
Yeah.
So I think it's cool to see what people are able to do. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for the opportunity to be on. More importantly, I think thanks for the chance to meet you. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Andre. Appreciate it.
All right, sir.
You've been listening to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Want to be our next guest? Visit beyondwealthpodcast.ca/guest. See you on the next episode.